Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
You can hear us? Okay.
Okay.
That's the end of the trip, not the beginning. So I wanted to show you the sort of the map of Australia because I don't know about any of you, but it was really a mystery to me. This is an enormous country the size of the United States. And where do you go? What do you do? When I asked my travel agents here, they really didn't have a good handle on it. And what I discovered was that Qantas Airlines has Qantas Vacations, and they know, of course, everything about Australia. And when you deal with them, they have certain deals because they own the airlines, one of which is called an Aussie Pass, AUSSIE. And for maybe as little as $1,100, you can get a round trip to Australia and 2 or 3 cities in the country, which is a phenomenal price. And they also will set up your vacation. So if you want to do it the Cadillac way, they can set up, and you could do it on your own the Cadillac way, whereas you tell them what cities you want to go to, and then they help you decide what you should see in each city. They put you up in a hotel that's going to be on the bus route of any tours you're taking. They pick you up at the airport, they take you back to the airport. So you kind of can do it on your own, but set up a package tour the way you want to do it. So it's a fabulous resource to use, no cost of course to use them. And also the other place that we found that had good flights was Fiji Airlines. So if you have Fiji in your trip, and you could stop in New Zealand and Australia, they often have a good package deal from North America. One thing to take in mind though, if you're using Qantas Vacations, they own the AAT Kings touring company. So they're always going to put you on those tours, which are the most expensive tours.
Those are the biggest, fanciest buses.
Right. So you can do the same tours for a lot less. For instance, at one point, we took a bus from Alice Springs to Uluru, and the AAT bus was $200 a person, and the one we took was $99 a person, just for this one straight 8-hour bus ride. So it is quite a bit different when you go on. So what we found was a company called Viator, Viator, and it's owned by TripAdvisor or vice versa. So you're going to have all the people who go on all these trips tell you how good each of the tours are. And then you can hand pick which one you want in each city by price and see how they, you can compare them to the AAT Kings, and most of them are pretty well the same tours. So we were able to save some money. Having said that, it's really expensive to take those escorted tours in Australia. For instance, just round figure, every single tour is around $200 a person. And why is that? Because everything in Australia, that's including prices in stores and restaurants and everything, include tax and tips in the price. So if you go there and you see a $20 hamburger and you faint, well, think about that's really a $12 hamburger with tax and tip already included. So some of the prices sound exorbitant, but when you think about it rationally, it isn't as bad as it sounds. The other thing I'm going to mention is that if you're going to go to what you might have known as Ayers Rock, but which is really now known, was always known as Uluru, and they've gone back to that indigenous name, you have to book minimally 3 months ahead, because it's owned by an indigenous company and there's only so many rooms there and they fill up rather quickly. The least expensive one is called the Pioneer, the Outback Pioneer. And it's kind of a motel-like place. It was perfectly fine, but even there, it was still like $258 a night. So it's quite expensive to go there. We only stayed one night. Most people stay 2 or 3 because they finally got there. So the other thing we're going to mention that I wanted to mention is most of the cities, all of the cities we went to, have what they call the free city tours. And you're going to find these all over the world, where it's a group of college students who are really pretty well versed in a walking tour of the city. and it's absolutely free. And what they expect you to do is tip them at the end what you think it was worth. And so that's also an inexpensive way to do your city tours. So you'll see them around town wearing these bright green "I'm free" t-shirts.
Sandra?
Yes.
There was a chat that Ron's back on again
Yes.
from Australia, and he just said that the Aussie dollar is now 77 cents US.
Wow. Okay, so you got a bargain there, right? Am I doing it frontwards or backwards?
Right. No.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, so you're getting a third of the cost off. The other thing to be aware of is when you're going to sort of the inexpensive restaurants in Australia, don't expect it to be the same flavors as North America. You're not going to find a pizza parlor on every corner, or a Chinese, a Greek restaurant or whatever, but you'll see more Asian food. So you're going to see Malaysian food and Thai food and all that, which is really healthy. So that's kind of good. And talking about healthy, Stan, because we were walking every day.
Well, because we were walking and we were eating healthy, I came back from there, like there's no bacon and eggs for breakfast. You'll see our next picture. Breakfast was always very, very healthy stuff. I came back a little over 20 pounds lighter.
So if you go to Australia, you can lose weight. So what a better reason to go to Australia?
I mean, there were days when we walked 28,000
steps. Okay, so we're showing you the picture because, imagine the breadth of it is as wide as the United States.
It's an enormous continent.
And basically, the big cities are kind of like the US on the eastern coast. You do have Perth on the west and Darwin up north. We didn't get to either of those because we had to make choices. So we kind of stayed on the east there.
Yeah, and the circled areas are basically the cities that we covered.
Okay, and so, and Stan wants to mention, we've mentioned it once before, we used a tool before we left, and it's called Rome to Rio, and he has a screenshot of what it's like.
And we've used this all over the world, including in Rome and in Rio.
And we learned about it in Vancouver Island, you Vancouver people there.
You just put in where you are, where you want to be, whether it's in the same city, same country, or whatever.
Anywhere in the world.
And it shows you on the left side, you'll see all the different options, how long they'll take and how much they cost. And you'll I don't see Uber here, but you'll see taxis and Ubers and walking and on and on and on.
And then you could decide how you want to get there. And it actually physically shows you, this is the way the train goes.
If you look up on top here, you get off the train, and then it shows you in dotted where you're walking.
So how far from the end you have to walk. It's a fabulous tool. We use it everywhere. We usually plan ahead using it, and we grab the screensavers and have it when we go. So the first, Stan was talking about the breakfast. Oh, those Australians and the New Zealanders are so healthy. Pretty well, because we were staying with Evergreens and another travel club. We would get this healthy muesli for breakfast with all
kinds of nuts
and dried fruits and fresh fruits and yogurt. It actually wound up tasting like we were having an ice cream sundae every breakfast. And that really kept us healthy and full for a lot of the day. So be prepared for healthfulness.
Yeah.
So in Sydney, when you leave the airport, it's cheaper to take an Uber than a taxi. A taxi will run $70 to $80, an Uber $40 to $50 to get downtown. We wanted to show you the beautiful trains in Sydney. You see the double decker?
I had never seen a double decker subway before.
Yeah. So modern and clean and nice. And staying at travel club members, what they usually did was they had a transit pass from another traveler, and they would pass it on to us with a few bucks on it so we could get on the train, and then we'd fill it up and use it, and then when we left, we'd leave it with them for the next person.
Yeah, but it works for the trains and the buses, not Uber.
Yeah. Also to say, the Evergreen and the other travel clubs are generally a little higher because it'll be a basic price plus. So it might be $30 or $40 and not the $20 a day that we used to in the US. So the first place we headed, there's a lot in Sydney, there's a lot of these open markets around town. So they're artisan oriented. You'll get a lot of really good food in the markets. And so we had, this one's called Paddington Market. And we went to this one because it was on the way to the famous Bondi Beach. So we went from here right to the beach. You might have heard of, am I saying it right? Bondi.
Bondi Beach.
Bondi Beach. It's known around the world as a great place to surf.
And it's a beautiful, you can see all that sand.
And what we did was we took this famous walk from Bondi Beach to Bronte Beach, which is all around an entire, I don't know,
As you're
peninsula, I don't know
walking, you
what
get
the word
these
is.
nice views.
So we noticed on the beach, if you look on the left, it was clothing optional,
Or top.
top optional. There's the guy sort of embarrassed, but look what it says on his bag there. He's in paradise, guys. So those are the kind of surprises you find when you travel.
And this, as you get up on that walkway, you're looking down over this gorgeous.
And all those little black dots are all those surfers.
Yeah, you can see the surfers all the way around there. They're all waiting for their waves.
So it was a wonderful couple of hour walk, depending on how slow. And these are sort of the sights you're going to see. You see how nice and clean that pathway is. It's an easy walk. You are going up and down.
And all these gorgeous rocks.
Yeah, beautiful scenery along the way. And there's Stan, he climbed a piece of it. Now, the next day, one of the tourists had told us, we didn't know before we left, there's free tours of the botanical gardens in Sydney. And there I am with just, a beautiful spray of orchids. Orchids are all over the place there. Here we consider it such an expensive flower, and there it's all over. And our tour guide there was interesting. I'm not much of a gardener. I don't know much about it. And what his tour was telling us almost the history of the universe based on the trees and the plants that grew. So it was a fascinating tour. This flower is the one you're going to see all over the city. I don't know the name of it. Maybe Ron or somebody there knows the name, but it's very popular. And the other thing that was kind of amazing in his talk is he showed us this Wollemi pine, which is as old as the dinosaurs. And they thought it was extinct, but a bushwalker discovered it somewhere in '94, and now they've saved it, and it's obviously they've got it growing right here. So that botanical garden tour was a big surprise. Okay, so everybody hears about the famous walk across the harbor bridge. Now we went from there to the port, because we thought we were going to walk across the bridge and then take the ferry back. And when we got there, we asked an important question, which was, how do you take the elevator up to the bridge? Because you can walk up a lot of steps to get to the platform, or you take the elevator. And he said, I have a secret for you. He said, don't do it the way you were going to do it. He said, take the ferry there and walk back, because if you walk back in the morning, the sun was on our back, and you're seeing the views of Sydney the entire time you're walking, rather than the views of a suburb the entire time you're walking. So it was a great piece of advice. And then when you are coming across, this is the view from the ferry of Luna Park, which is an amusement park. And if any of you grew up or know Brooklyn, New York, that name comes from Coney Island. And we were told by our host.
And there's actually a little shop called Coney Island right in there.
And then our host told us when we got across, to walk and find the secret garden, which we did. And it really was secret. We wouldn't have found it if we didn't keep asking people.
Yeah, we have to ask questions.
Where is this garden? So that was kind of our goal when we went across, to find the garden. And then we came back to the bridge. And there's the picture of the bridge.
Now you can see here, at either end of the bridge, you have these giant areas. There's an elevator inside, and there's stairs.
I don't know if it's an elevator or stairs, just stairs.
No, well, we took the elevator up.
Okay, and people actually pay to walk, how do you say, climb the bridge?
Yeah, you can actually, at the other end, at the city end, there's a place where you can go up and walk across.
I don't know how far you climb, but you climb part of that. It's a couple of $100, but if you want the bragging rights, other than
And
that,
we
you're-
actually saw people up there.
yeah, you're walking across that straight bridge. And again, in the next picture, you'll see the walkway. And it's again, a nice, easy walk across the bridge. And they want to make sure no one's jumping off. So those of you who know us know that we always have these kissing pictures. So we wanted it, of course, in front of the Sydney Opera House. So there it was in the distance. The next picture of the Opera House, and someone else was mentioning the shape of the building. And in one of the tours we took, we learned about how the architect, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Jorn Utzon, who was from Denmark, who won the contest to design it, used an orange peels to lean on each other to get to those forms and how he wanted them to look, which is kind of fascinating idea. And unfortunately, you know, the government changed over a few times over the years as they were building it, and he and them fell out of favor, and he never was invited to the opening, which is pretty sad. You can go inside the opera. Okay, there's Stan, he's climbed the stairs.
Yeah, you get there, you climb the stairs, you can go in the top.
You can go inside even if you haven't paid for a tour, because of course there's a souvenir store there. But more importantly, there's the next picture. There's a beautiful clean bathroom, which you're always looking for when you're traveling. And a nice air-conditioned, it's really hot there, an air-conditioned area. The purple is sitting area. And there was a
Video playing
of
with the history of the
bridge.
the Opera House.
Yeah, building of the Opera House, yeah. So it was a really nice pit stop. We cooled off here. The next day, we took one of what I was talking about earlier, these escorted tours out of the city. This one was to the famous Blue Mountains. It was called the Blue Mountains Tour. And the first place we stopped was a zoo, because you want to make sure you're going to see those famous kangaroos. You can see Stan feeding one here.
And so many of them are tiny like this.
Yes, that was, I think, our biggest surprise, how little they were. I don't know if that's a kangaroo or it could be. And again, Ron can probably help and tell us. Now this, we really love this picture because there's a Joey, a baby Joey sneaking out of his mama's pouch.
Sticking out. His leg was sticking out.
Yeah. And the animals that are indigenous to Australia are, this is the famous koalas that were in danger during the wildfires.
And you can actually take a picture like this, petting a koala.
Yeah. And then what's the next one? I think there were, these were the dingoes, which are kind of look like fox or dogs. And then there's the wombats. Those are the kind of unusual ones that we wouldn't see in North America. And you can feed a bunch of them. There's feed that you can buy at the beginning. And then you're really heading to the Blue Mountains. This is one of their famous, this is like the Mount Rushmore.
It's called the Three Sisters.
It's those three rocks. And if you see in the distance, it kind of looks pale blue. So those are the Blue Mountains in the distance. And then we took, what we call the Disney tour. So you want to do the second one first?
Yes.
Yeah, the Disney tour, the first part of it, it's called Scenic World. So you're going through a rainforest, but you're going in different kinds of transport. So the first part of it, we got to go in this cable car ride, but now you go back to the first one, which has a glass floor. So you're standing on glass, looking at that whole thing through the glass, which is kind of wild. And okay, go on to the next one. And again, they're the Three Sisters and that beautiful blue haze. This is the area that was on fire during those wildfires. After we left, we swear we never threw a match, but this is the area that burned a lot. So
I don't know what it looks like now,
I don't
but
know what it looks like.
It doesn't look anything like this anymore.
Yeah. So after we did that, we walked through the rainforest. So there's beautiful walking, but that's me pretending it's raining. And this was an area that there was mining up in the areas, which leads to the way we came down. So the next part of our Disney tour is you get on the steepest incline railroad in the world. So it looks like a perfectly easy ride in a train
Yeah,
until
once you get in, this is what
it goes
feels
90
like.
degrees straight down, and you have to hold on to the bars so you don't fall out. Then after the wonderful ride down, we took a lazy, it's all part of the same trip, a lazy boat ride on is it the Parramatta River? Parramatta River. And by doing it by water going home, you get to see all the gorgeous real estate, those expensive houses that have the waterfront views. Sydney was a surprise in that there's so much water everywhere and so many people live on the edge of water. I think that was the biggest surprise about that city.
There's all these pieces of land that stick out into the water. So as you're walking around, there's water everywhere.
So we did some free walking tours in the city. This is the Queen Victoria building that was built in 1893 to 1898. This Queen Victoria there.
Yeah, Queen Victoria, a
she's the
beautiful statue
there
right in front.
and under construction.
Whoops.
But what it is right now is it's an upscale fashion eating mall, but it's certainly worth going into.
You see this archway right here in the front?
So it's a beautiful,
This is what it is inside.
Beautiful building inside. And, you go to the next one. Different views. This is the 3 floors going down, and the clock is one of those story clocks. It's up in the middle, and
all around here.
Yeah.
There's pictures.
At a certain times of the day, the windows open, and you see and hear the story of sort of history of the area. And they have, if you ever wanted to take British tea, there's a couple of tea parlors in there. And Stan had the most expensive piece of cake we have ever bought, but he couldn't resist it. There's a Viennese pastry shop, and his mother comes from Vienna, and there's a famous cake called a Sachertorte.
And they had a real Sachertorte there.
So his supper was a $14 piece of cake.
Just a slice.
But he said it was worth it. But we wanted to tell you about the deal in the basement. Oh, no. We're always looking for the clean bathrooms. So this is the bathroom.
We walked in there, and I had never seen 4 people can stand around the circle urinating.
And you can't see each other. So we felt we had to do a tour of bathrooms. So this was assuming original one, and then to the left and right are more modern stainless steel ones. So I felt this was part of what you should know about Australia. But I mentioned, though, even though the food was expensive in the upper levels, we discovered, because we were going home somewhere around 5 o'clock, in the metro, the subway, whatever they call it, there's in the basement, that all of the, and I'll use the word fast food very loosely because it's not McDonald's, but all the different quick food places are half price after 5 o'clock. So we got our dinner for half price, and
we got a lot of good deals.
Yeah, it was we had a Greek one, and then there was a pastry place, and then there was an Asian one. And so and in fact, we took some for lunch the next day. We bought an extra one. Yeah. We're always sort of planning ahead. So
anyways, then we moved on from there. We flew from Sydney to Alice Springs. Alice Springs is way out in the middle here. One thing, Australia is so huge, you have to fly from place to place.
So this is what you would call a desert. It's called the Outback. Any of you have heard of Outback Steak? That's where it got its name. So it's really like the Wild West. It's just scrub, and ranches are called stations, and they're very far apart, scattered throughout that area. And the first thing we did when we got there was,
now in Alice Springs, there's a few. I mean, it's
there's
the
few sites to see.
It's the only city in that whole center area,
and it's the sort of jumping off place. For those of you who want to go to, if you've heard of it, called Ayers Rock before, but it's called Uluru, which I mentioned earlier, which is the indigenous giant rock in the middle of the outback. So Alice Springs is the jump off point to get there. Yeah. So there's 3 or 4 things to do there. This one is really interesting. It was called the Royal Flying Doctor Service. You imagine you have people scattered in these ranches all over, And what happens if somebody needs a doctor? So they organized these small planes that can land and bring a patient back quickly for whatever they needed or take care of them on the, so there's a whole little museum, I'm going to say in town for this one. And there's two out of town. One of them is the telegraph station, which we didn't get to, but the second one, which was really fascinating, was called the School of Air. And this is what we needed to know about before the pandemic, because these people have been doing distance learning for about, I don't know, 50, 60, 80 years. I don't know how long. So that's a teacher
Now,
on
you
the
have all these
screen
kids who live all around the Outback.
in those stations, and
And-
they can't get to school. There's no schools, they're miles and miles from each other. So at the beginning, it was done by, what do you call it? Radio.
Yeah, shortwave radio.
Shortwave radio. And now it's done by computer, and they
Yeah,
have it.
it's all by video.
And twice a year they meet in Alice Springs or somewhere, and they all get to see each other in person. Other than that, they only see each other on the screens because it's all very distance learning. So we surely could have learned from the Australians during the pandemic. So that was a pretty fascinating. Now we stayed at the DoubleTree Hilton, and I'm mentioning it for two reasons. One is because it was, again, one of the lower priced hotels there, not low, but and this was a peacock who just, there at the door when you walk in. And I wanted to try what's called like a bushwhacker meal. So all of those unusual foods that you're only going to find in Australia. So this was our, in the Saltbush Cafe in the DoubleTree Hotel. The Outback platter was $32 for two, which is not a lot of money. Remember, that's all in. So mountain peppered kangaroo, emu sliders, smoked wallaby, which is a fish, camel and date sausages. So, we shared this, and then a big bowl of sweet potato fries, I think. And it was plenty for supper. So we lived through it. I can't say it was the best meal I ever had, but it was edible. So the next day we left on the trip to Uluru. And the way you get there from Alice Springs is you go by bus. And I wanted to go by bus to have, you could fly, but I wanted to have that feeling of the desert, going on and on and on and on through the scrub. And they stop at a few stations along the way for, bathrooms and bites to eat.
You get to kiss a camel.
Right. So Stan got to kiss the camel. I wasn't going to. And then after that, I think there was some, I think it's an ostrich. I'm not,
No, it's not
probably
it's
not a different, one of those kind of animals.
Lots of birds.
Yeah, lots of birds in Australia. And it was, a long ride through the desert, and you generally got the feel of it. This is
called, it's the monument that shows the center of Australia. So you're at the very center of the whole continent, the geographic center.
So, they stop at a few places along the way. And the company we used for this, we used the same, I told you that bus was half price, and we use it for another reason. There are two main areas of Uluru, and this company was doing an evening tour. So they dropped us off at the hotel, and then an hour later, they picked us up again for the sunset tour.
Because you have to get there at sunset and at sunrise.
The whole idea of sort of experiencing the rock is to see it in all the different lights, and to tour and learn about the indigenous culture that lived there and still lives there. So this is Sandra with a black umbrella.
But this is not Uluru.
This is the other part that most people don't get to. It is called Katajuta.
Yeah, Katajuta.
Which is kind of I don't know what you would call this.
It's a whole rock formation. You walk through it, and there's a garden at the other end.
Okay.
And
so we did this walk before we did the sunset Uluru, which is
it's about a 40-minute drive from there to Uluru.
To give you an idea of how big this rock area is.
Now, when you're in here, number one, it's hot. Number two, lots of bugs.
I don't know if you could all see the tiny little bugs. Stan thought I was crazy to buy this bug hat before we left, and he didn't want to put it on, and he didn't want to wear it. But this was only a little bit of bugs.
There were times when I could hardly see through the bugs.
Yeah. So I definitely suggest you buy one of these before you leave, and have it with who we used it in this evening walk, and then we used it in the morning, again in the morning walk, and it was really worth it.
Now, we then, on our drive to Uluru, you can see how far it is, and this, we're close already. That's Uluru in the distance.
So this is from the Katajuta part to the rock part.
Now you're going to see it in all different types of light. This is the rock up close. And
Well,
we're
Not that
getting,
close yet.
well, pretty well. We're getting to sunset.
Okay, we have to do our required kiss. And now you see it's starting to get purpley.
This is twilight.
We unfortunately got there on a night that was overcast, so we didn't really get it in all its splendor, but we still enjoyed
Got a nice
learning about it.
sunset.
So this is in the morning now, so you get up like 5:30 in the morning, and we're looking at it from a different angle now. So in the morning full sun, it's, all orange and
It always
pinks.
looks a different color.
This is the morning walk, which was to teach us more about the indigenous life and the people that live there. So we're walking into a cave, and then we're going to see some of the cave drawings. And the guide is explaining the meaning of the different drawings. And I left out the information about the neighborhood. Once you get into the area where the hotel is, there's, I don't remember, maybe 5 different kinds of places to sleep, everything from, a high-end one to camping outside. There's also a sound and light show that you could do outside at night. There's buses that go around the village. There's a supermarket. It's quite a little neighborhood. A free astronomer talks. We didn't get to do all of that, but we did do some of these guided talks. So this was the morning one. And this is just some of the more of the rock. Oh, this was the pool. This was
That's a pool.
their watering hole. They always need to have water.
It's like holy water pool.
This is we got to touch and feel the vibrations on the rock.
You can see we're wearing our
Yeah.
hats.
At this point, as soon as the bugs came out, the hats came out.
Why was the rock vibrating?
You're feeling the whatever that the indigenous people feel.
The spirit of the rock.
spirit of the rock, I guess. Yeah,
Okay.
It's like the ground vibrates there.
well, I didn't honestly feel terribly anything.
Now, what you're looking at here,
For hundreds of years, people always wanted to climb the rock. So there is this deadly climb. And the reason I say that is because there's just this little rope up on top.
If you look, people go up and
They
you have
walk on the rock.
you have to drag yourself all the way up to this point. And at this point, there's a railing that you can hold on to,
A
so-
rope railing.
a rope railing. So you have to get there first.
And then you gotta drag yourself.
And then you drag
to the
yourself
top.
all the way to the top.
Right. Now, they didn't realize that they were climbing on a sacred spot. And so
And
finally,
people didn't care it was a sacred spot except for the indigenous people.
finally this year, the indigenous were able to get the country to stop the climb. And unfortunately for us, we were there on the day it was stopping. So there was hordes and hordes and hordes of people trying to get up there before they closed it down, and hordes of TV cameras. But it was an exciting time to be there. But we did not do the climb.
No. Whoops. I'm going the wrong way here.
So that's an actual spring there at the rock?
Yes, that's their watering hole. You go back.
Right here. Okay. And then we got onto a plane and we flew back from the rock, and there's our last view. And you can see how there's nothing around it.
Yeah, so we wanted, it's just all scrubland and desert, and they found this magical place where they could live and still do. So I think we're going to stop
You
there,
can stop here, answer questions, et
answer any
cetera.
questions, and if there's more time, we'll just keep moving on
From
to
here, we
Melbourne.
flew to Melbourne, and we'll do Melbourne next week.
Oh, okay. Well, we do have a number of things in the chat column.
Okay,
So I might start at the end, the most recent, and we'll work back. So Beth from
should I
Cape
stop?
May.
Should I stop
Oh,
sharing?
can you see them as well?
Wait a second.
Stan and Sandra, or do you want me to read them?
right now,
Um,
read them because he's busy trying to find it.
Chat. Here we go. I see some,
Okay.
right. Okay. You're saying you're starting at the bottom?
Yeah, why don't, since that's
When
the
were
most
you,
current.
when were you there was a great question. Yes, I did want to address that. We were told to either go in April or October because that's spring or fall. We went in October and we did it backwards. We went to New Zealand first and Australia second, and that was only because the Evergreen lady we were staying with in New Zealand could only do it that way. Had we had our druthers, we would have done it in reverse. Australia first and New Zealand second because of temperature. So it was colder in New Zealand than it had to be, and it was hotter in when we got to the outback. It was probably around 115 when
Right.
we were walking around the outback, and then in New Zealand it was down to 40s. So we needed warm jackets up in the mountains. So that's the suggested of time. The helicopter rides, I didn't mention all the different ways to do it.
No, there's how long were you in Australia? We actually spent
Not exactly.
Wait,
Still,
3 weeks.
3 weeks around Australia.
And not
I know what-
around, we only, as you can see,
And it wasn't enough.
it wasn't enough. We were only in Sydney, Melbourne, Cairns, and Alice Springs
Yeah.
area. There's still a lot of the country to get to.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
elevation change in the climb of the rock. Well, we didn't climb it, but it's really tall. I don't know if Ron Grant can tell us how tall it is. It was way taller than I expected it to be.
Oh, okay. So Beth climbed the rock in 1988. I
Okay.
see.
So I don't know how, I'm gonna say 10 stories tall. It was just really high.
Yeah.
How many tourists go back to the bus? Very fast,
Due to
due
heat
to
and
the heat
bugs?
and bugs.
Actually,
Nobody
nobody.
actually went back. You could sit on a bench here and there. I did not make it all the way to the end of the walk because I was too hot. So I only did half the walk. It wasn't a problem. And you could see I used an umbrella, which really, really worked a lot.
Ron, do you have anything to share about the Big Rock?
Okay.
Maybe not.
Somebody's mentioning supermarket food. The supermarket food in New Zealand and Australia was fine. We did takeout food sometimes, and we didn't talk about as well, all the different, for instance, in Australia as well as New Zealand, they had the little British bakeries where you can get the little pies that are filled with meat or vegetables or lamb or chicken. There's probably 20 different kinds of pies for lunch. And supermarket has a lot of food to go. So that's an inexpensive way to grab a lunch. The other thing I didn't mention that I wanted to was when we were at Alice Springs, we had to sort of load up for the trip across the desert. We were told we didn't, to take 2 liters each of water, just in case there was a breakdown. And then I did buy food, in the town because I didn't know what we were going to find at the stations along the way. So I kind of packed lunch and water.
One of the things that they did provide, our bus company as well as the more expensive one, we had a picnic near the rock where they just set out a whole lunch.
See this at the twice the sunset tour. There's cheese and crackers and raw veggies and dips and wine and drinks at sunset, and then in the morning there's a breakfast of cereal and fruit and coffee and whatever. So both of the tours included meals there. And then in that village, there's different kinds of cafeterias and restaurants to grab anything from pizza to whatever you want.
Okay. So I don't know if you all, did you even go to a supermarket
Oh, yeah.
in Australia?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
in both countries, we always go to supermarkets because they're fascinating just to see all the different kinds of foods.
And as someone said, the food is actually not, the prices are very good in the supermarket.
Mhm.
And especially these bakeries, these where you get a lot of like British type food. There was
Those
one,
little like
These different things.
maybe
That's
like $3 for a little pie for lunch. You know, they weren't
and
terribly.
there was one place that had
Yes.
wonderful chocolate croissants.
Maybe it's
Okay, so Ron had typed that only the rich live on the Sydney waterfront
right.
when you were
Yes.
Well,
showing
you could
the
see
picture.
those buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's an expensive city to live in. Yeah.
Yeah.
What souvenir we brought back from both New Zealand and here and Australia? We brought back
Okay.
T-shirts.
Thanks for
I'm
coming.
wearing
Yeah.
Uluru here.
Yeah.
My T-shirt.
Ah, great.
What else? What other?
No, we're not really souvenir buyers.
You're the same as me. You
I don't know if you want to get to the end. Do you think you can get to, you have the second one?
Yeah.
In the
Yeah, I
next,
know.
in the
Possible.
next week, we actually have a picture of a souvenir problem we had. I don't know if you can get to that picture, but we'll tell the story if you could find it. If not, you'll hear it next time.
What?
Do you know where it is?
Yeah, I know where
So
it
does
is.
anyone else have, I don't know what other sort of general questions about how far apart things are? I mean, literally they're, you know, flying from, you know, Florida to Iowa and, you know, Colorado to Washington, DC. The country's as
So
big.
maybe they've stopped showing pictures. That's why. Start video, mute participants more.
Oh, I think Ron's having trouble.
Oh,
I have one more question, and then we probably need to go to the pie crust recipe. How long did it take you to plan this trip?
oh, that's a good question.
Sandra, I should tell you, we have a 45-page document that she wrote. All
It's because
her
I
plans.
knew nothing of Australia. The travel agents here couldn't answer all the questions about what do you see in each city, you know, so I didn't even know what to aim at. So what I did is, what I usually do is I read one of the guidebooks like Frommer's or one of those guidebooks, and I'll read it cover to cover and then kind of decide what sounds interesting to me. So that's what I start off with. And then I'll look at a tour, like a company's tour, like one of the major companies, I don't know, I'm thinking Globus, so one of the, what's the British one? The ones that do the escorted tours.
Yeah.
So I'll look and see what highlights they hit. And then I'll dig in to see, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this?
And then we had a couple of friends and relatives who had been to Australia.
So it took me 6 months of reading about it, figuring out, deciding which cities to go to, deciding how many zoos do you want to go to? Do you
Yeah.
want to go to the zoo in this city? Do you want to go to the zoo in that city?
And when we go and almost anywhere, it's all planned out day by day. Everything's planned.
Right. So, I mean, we left free days. So what we would do, let's say we would be for 5 days in Sydney, we'll plan 2 of the days to take an escorted trip somewhere and 3 of the days to be on our own, to do whatever we wanted. But even on their own, I have a sort of a wish list of, you know, maybe we could do this or this or this or
Yeah,
this.
and I had to plan it according to
What's
how
near
to
each
get-
other.
Had to get where we wanted and how long it was going to take.
And of course, when you stay with Evergreens and people, they have other ideas of things you could see, or they'll tell you the easiest way to get there or the least expensive way. For instance, there's one tour that I'll talk about in Melbourne, that there are these famous penguins that come out of the water, tiny, tiny penguins. And you'll spend $200 to take that tour and each. However, there's a beach in Melbourne where you could see it for free. You could just go there at night and see some penguins come out. So, these are the little things you find out from reading those guidebooks and reading what people have to say on TripAdvisor about this, that, or the other thing. So I
There was a
spent,
question about language. The nice thing about both Australia and New Zealand, they're English. So no language issue at all. That's-
I think our biggest surprise, sort of talking about people, was I didn't expect the country to be so brown, the people to be like, we would be on a bus and we'd be the only white people on the bus. And I think that was one of the surprises. There's so many cultures that have mixed there from Asia and everywhere else, that people are every color of beige and brown of the rainbow, and we stuck out. Being the white, North Americans. So that was a big surprise. So you have all those indigenous people and Asians and everything. So it was a beautiful mosaic, a kaleidoscope of all the countries there.
Someone said Sydney has more Asians than white, and
Yeah,
it's true.
somebody wrote that in,
Yeah.
and I didn't even see that.
Hmm.
I think this was one of the easiest countries that we've traveled to, I don't know, 60 some odd countries in the world. New Zealand, Australia were probably our easiest trip. The people are so, this is where I could tell the story. The people are so unbelievably friendly. This is, your worst case scenario. When we took the walking tour in Sydney, we had stopped. I like to go to bars to use bathrooms because they'll always let you go to the bathroom in a bar. You don't have to beg like a restaurant. And so I went into a bar, I used the bathroom. An hour later, we're on a walking tour, and I realized I do not have my cell phone. It had fallen out of my pants pocket, obviously in the restroom. So we call the bar and we tell them, we've lost it. And, I suffered through that whole walking tour. I didn't know what to do. They hadn't found it. So at the end of the tour, we went back to the bar and they still hadn't found it. So we realized at that point, we better go to the police station and mention that it's been
Yeah,
stolen.
we want to report it.
Because
at
we have
least.
to, if we have to claim it on our insurance, we got to have a report. So we go to the police station, and the friendliest police in the world, the lady who took all the information, she had been to Quebec. We were talking sightseeing in Quebec, and she said, "Oh, don't worry, they'll find it." I said,
They
right.
kept telling us, "Don't worry,
Don't worry,
find it.
they'll
Don't worry."
find it. They'll find it. At least 3 of the police officers said the same thing. And lo and behold, that night at 8 o'clock at night, Stan got a call that some lady thought it was her phone. She walked back to the bar. She brought it to them, and we picked it up the next morning. I thought it was shipped around the world by that point. I never thought I would ever see that phone again. So that was how nice people were in Australia and how friendly. And I said the food was, food you've seen before, and the people spoke English, and everything was just, the weather was great. So it was just really, really easy to go anywhere, ask anything, do anything.
Somebody mentioned Tasmania. We did not get to Tasmania, even though we knew people in Tasmania. One of our trips somewhere in Europe,
We met a farmer.
we really connected with this Tasmanian couple.
So
but
Tasmania is an
next time.
island south of the mainland.
It's just south of Melbourne.
Yeah.